everyone, my name is Lara and today we will be talking about the SQE Route Demystified and everything which you need to know. So my name is Lara, as I said, and I work as the Student Recruitment Officer here at the College of Legal Practice. I deal with a lot of inquiries which come in and hold like one-to-one conversations, meetings with prospective students, and usually try to advise on like the pathways which we offer and all of our different courses. I work under Nicola and we also host a lot of these webinars and try to sort of explain to students about the different pathways and the different courses which we offer. I'll now pass you over to Nicola.
Thanks, Lara. Hi there, everyone. As Lara mentioned, really, our team are really here to assist with any questions that you have in terms of deciding the route to take for progressing through the SQE, what's involved in it, and basically everything we're going to be trying to cover for you this evening. So we're very pleased to be able to assist you during this webinar. I'll pass you over to Jane now.
Lovely, thanks Lara. So I'm Jane Waddell, I'm Head of Curriculum here at the College of Legal Practice, so really everything on the academic side. Like most of our academic team, I practiced as a solicitor for many years before moving into higher education and then teaching postgraduate professional law students. Great, thanks Lara.
You're welcome, thank you. So in today's session, we'll be going over who the College of Legal Practice are, and we'll also be discussing the SQE route and essentially what's involved in the SQE exams. We'll then be talking about how to prepare with the College of Legal Practice for the SQE and also sharing some sort of tips on the SQE exams and also leaving some time at the end for any questions which you might have from this. So for those of you who don't already know, the College of Legal Practice, it's a fully virtual postgraduate law school and we're based in the UK and we essentially specialise in the SQE. So our main ethos is to basically make all of our courses as accessible and affordable, therefore breaking down any barriers. We help to facilitate increased access into the profession and we offer an inclusive learning environment along with personal and flexible learning and support. Up on the bottom of the screen, there's a number of different organisations and partners who we work with offering SQE training along with also offering our own courses alongside of them as well. So as you can see, we work with a number of different partnerships and organisations such as Keele University, the University of Law, Reed Smith, Middlesex University of London as well. So we are fully online, so all of our courses are taught completely virtual for an online learning platform. So essentially, what is the SQE? So this is just a very brief overview. So the SQE was introduced and essentially in order to become a solicitor, you need to have these four things. So you need to have a degree or equivalent. You need to have passed both the SQE1 and the SQE2 and also gain 2 years of qualifying work experience along with meeting the suitability requirements set out by the Solicitors Regulation Authority. So it essentially aims to increase access and diversity and it's run by Kaplan for the Solicitors Regulation Authority. And essentially is introduced in order to increase some flexibility around qualifying work experience. So SQE1, this focuses on the legal knowledge, whereas SQE2, it also focuses on the legal knowledge, but also focuses on your skills as well. So for some of the individuals who might be online today, you already might be qualified as a solicitor in another jurisdiction. So therefore, you might be exempt from the SQE2. But that's something which we need to double check with the Solicitors Regulation Authority, meaning you'd only need to take the SQE1 examination and it's assessed as to a standard of a day one solicitor as well. So I'll now pass you over to Jane, who will be talking a little bit more about the SQE and some facts as well.
Lovely, thanks Lara. So SQE1, what are the key facts? Well, we've set them out there. I think most of you know it's a multiple choice assessment and it tests what we call functioning legal knowledge. Now that's known as FLK, functioning legal knowledge, and it's the basic spread of legal knowledge you need that a day one solicitor should possess even if they then go on to specialise, it's considered the base that every practising solicitor needs. There are split into FLK1 and FLK2, and there's 13 practice areas in total. So it's actually quite a lot. And they range from the usual suspects, property law, criminal litigation, business law, right through to conduct, which is ethics, contract law, and so on. I won't list them all, but it's a lot. And they are assessed in a random form. So they don't flag that it's a property question or that it's a litigation question in the context of property. You have to be able to work out yourself what it is. And you can do a property question first and then a criminal, and they mix them all up. They are single best answer, which they're called SBAs. So it means all the options you're given, and there's 5 options, are plausible, but only one is better than the others. So you have to be able to select which one is better. So it's not a case of discarding 2 or 3 because they're ridiculously wrong and it's obvious to everyone. That's not the case. So you've 1 minute 40 seconds to answer these questions. It's very much practical law. It's about understanding the issue and applying the law. So having a secure knowledge of the law as a starting point, then it's being able to apply it to a real life scenario. You've got 1 minute 40 seconds, as I've said, and you keep up that pace over 2.5 hours. And there's 4 lots of 2.5-hour exams over 2 days. So it's 10 hours in total. And so what students need is a lot of stamina and a really secure knowledge that they can keep retrieving it under pressure. In terms of the practical arrangements, these assessments, you can take them 4 times a year. And they are if you've ever done a driving test, they're in the Pearson VUE test centres, and there's locations all over the country. Sorry, I said 4 times a year. SQE1 is twice a year. SQE2 is 4 times a year. And they take place in January and also July. So a lot of prep, what we advise students is have a think about which assessment you want to take and then work backwards to choose which prep course will get you ready at that point. So it's a little bit like training for a marathon. You wouldn't train and then stop for 6 months. You want just to time it nicely so that you're ready for those assessments, you're mentally fit, and the knowledge is at your fingertips. We've set out the exam fees there. They're £2,000, and that's for this year, and they do tend to go up each year. So you do need to keep an eye on that. Lovely. Lara, if I could have the next slide. Excellent, thank you. So what does an MCQ look like? So I'm going to give you a go. It's a contract one here, and it is probably within a lot of your knowledge or your working knowledge in terms of being out and about and just your dealings. So I'm just going to give you a minute to read it and then choose an answer. All right, so you've all, I hope, chosen an answer. I suspect you're going to say that I haven't given you 1 minute 40 seconds, but hey-ho, you're not in exam conditions. So if we could have the next slide. There we are. So there's the answer. And it's because the sign on the car was only an invitation to treat, not an offer capable of acceptance. And what you see underneath, you will not get when you sit the real exam for in the Pearson VUE test centres when you're doing SQE1. But when you're doing our practice MCQs, we will give you feedback. And we don't just, and to me, that's key when it comes to teaching and learning, not just that you you're told you've got something wrong, but you're told why you've got it wrong or right, and you referred back to the relevant part in the manual so that you can top up your learning or try and unpick where you went wrong. Lovely. So next question, please. So that's SQE1, which actually is quite formulaic and quite prescriptive. It's all about getting the knowledge and getting the MCQs right and practicing your MCQ technique. Whereas with SQE2, it's much more complex. And you cannot sit SQE2 until you've passed SQE1. And there's a good reason for that. Because SQE2, while it's skills, and it's looking at examining skills you need as a lawyer, those skills have to be given a legal context, and it's 5 of the practice areas that you've studied in SQE1. And we've set out the practice areas there. They're what I call the big 5. So it's business, dispute resolution, which is civil litigation, and then property, criminal law, and it's really criminal practice. How do you practice it? Not the theory, but what does it look like in real life? And then wills. And those are considered pretty standard subjects that every lawyer should have some sort of grasp of. So, for instance, if you are practicing business, it's really good to know the basics of litigation, because if you get something wrong, that's probably where it's going to head. So just having those basic skills or knowledge are essential. So 6 skills, and we've listed them down the side there. You'll see, and I'll just talk you through what those essential skills are and how you're assessed on them. So advocacy is an oral skill. So it means you actually have to stand up and perform in a setting and deal with a matter that you would be dealing with in court. Case and matter analysis is very much what it says. So you're analysing a case, and of course legal advice is so important. The way you structure it, the way you approach it is so important. And for instance, a lawyer will never say may if they mean will, because they have totally different meanings. So just that precision and being able to analyse an issue and also be able to spot what the key legal points are and be able to take away all the red herrings. Because no client ever comes into you and flags what's wrong or what the problem is. You have to be able to sift through all the issues and work out what the legal issues are. Then client interview is very much what it says. It's another oral skill. And it's done with actors in SQE2, and you have to be able to interview your client in a way that you can extract the information you need and be able to ask the right questions and give the right level of advice. So it's very much thinking on your feet, so your knowledge has to be secure. And then that interview is followed up by writing an attendance note that needs to reflect the interview and pull out the key points and be able to analyse them. Then we've got legal drafting and legal research and legal writing. They're all written skills, as is case and matter analysis. So legal drafting is all about being able to draft documents. And of course, that to me, that's the bread and butter of what a solicitor does, being able to draft court documents, being able to draft board minutes, shareholder resolutions, leases in property. So being able to do good, precise drafting, and there's a real technique, is essential. Then we've got legal research, and the good news with that is because in the exam centre you don't have access to the internet, the legal research is very limited and it's very sanitized. You're simply given a selection of papers and you need to be able to sift through them and research the points that you've been asked to address. So you're not having to go off into the blue yonder and get swamped with research material. And then lastly, we've got legal writing. And back to a point I made earlier, being able to write a legal letter or a legal email in a way that conveys the precise points that a client needs to know. It has to be succinct, it has to be concise, and it has to be precise. So again, being able to practice that, and writing's a bit of a dying art now, or certainly formal writing is. So that is one of the key skills that we teach you and that you'll be assessed in. So just moving back over to the other column, what does it look like, actual SQE2? Well, they call them stations, and there's 16 of them. 12 are written, so it's those skills I've just talked about that are assessed by writing. And then there's the 4 oral stations, 2 are advocacy and 2 are client interviewing. Those are the ones that students, I think, get most nervous about and need to practice. I mean, you need to practice all of them, without a doubt. So in terms of the written ones, you can take them worldwide. That's easy. And again, it's Pearson VUE type centres. But the oral assessments are more limited just because of the scale of those assessments and the fact they need actors and settings to be able to assess you properly. So at the moment, they're in Cardiff, Manchester, London and Birmingham. So you need to have a good think about which one you would like to go to. Some of them fill up very, very quickly. So that's something to keep an eye on. And the assessment dates are 4 times a year. So plenty of choice. And again, as I said, for SQE1, work out which one you would like to focus on and then work backwards in terms of choosing your prep course. Only caveat is you can't sit SQE2 until you've passed SQE1. So you do need to have a look at the overall picture and what you think is achievable. Now, it won't come as a surprise that the fees are £1,000 more than SQE1. They're £3,000 simply because of the complexity of the assessment and the number of assessments you're taking. And they're over a number of days. It's not just 2 days. And the whole assessment period can straddle 2 to 3 weeks. So you have to be ready for that and ideally book in quite quickly. Lovely. Could I have the next slide, please? Which is what is qualifying legal education and qualifying work experience here. It used to be known as simply a recognised training period, which was caught in a training contract. It's now called QWE, qualifying work experience. Now, for me, this is the absolute fundamental difference between the old system and the new one. And back to that little jigsaw slide that Lara showed you right towards the beginning of this presentation. You can now do your qualifying work experience before, during, or after your studies. So you can mix and match, whereas before, all students had to finish the studying and pass before they could then go on and train. And that's where the bottleneck was, where students couldn't get training contracts. So all that study was wasted because they couldn't then get the 2 years training and qualify. Whereas now you can mix and match. And it seems to be working. So people who've been paralegals for years have already got the qualifying work experience. Others have managed to collect some of it in pro bono clinics or doing other advisory work. It can be undertaken anywhere in the world, but the reality is it really needs to be with a firm who can sign off the work you're doing, in which case it needs to be a firm that's regulated by the Law Society of England and Wales, and therefore is more likely to be here in the UK. So it's 24 months, but it can be taken in up to 4 different organisations. So you're not necessarily have to be with the same firm. And there's no minimum or maximum length for those 4 different organised periods of training within those organisations. The only thing you have to do is make sure it's signed off by a solicitor or the compliance officer in the firm. And in order to sign it off, you need to keep a record. Now, most firms with formal training contracts will supply all of that, but that's just something to be mindful of. You do need to keep a record of the work you're doing, particularly if it's over 4 different organisations. So next slide, we'll have a look at the SQE pathways. And then, So I've done a lot of talking about the exam, and that's all good and well, but the real legwork is done when you're trying to prep for it. So it's a little bit like a plane. I've told you about how you're going to get, as soon as you go on a plane, you're told how to get off. So I've told you how to get off the plane, i.e. what SQE1 and SQE2 involve. But what does the prep look like to get you ready for those national exams? So our SQE1 prep module starts with a study pack, and we have 13 practice manuals. And I talked at the beginning of this presentation about the fact 13 practice areas known as functioning legal knowledge, or FLK. When you start with us, we will give you 4 of them before you teaching starts properly, so that you can just get ahead with your preparation. Then during the course, you get guided reading where you're told, read this bit. And then once you've read that part of the manual, you then move down and do exercises, flashcards, embed your learning, drag and drop. And then at the end of each 2.5-hour subunit, you've got multiple choice questions. Because everything is pointing towards how do you handle your newly acquired knowledge in the context of a multiple choice question. So every subunit finishes with at least 10. Some of them are learning aids rather than full-blown complex multiple choice questions. But what we do is build you up over the course of the module. So we build you up in terms of the complexity and also the number of MCQs. And on top of, I'll come back to those MCQs in a moment and the tests, but we also have over 1,900 videos which introduce the topics and just give you an overview of what you're learning. And we also do seminars. So the lecturers, or we call them supervisors, will unpick tricky areas for you to focus on rather than cover everything. They'll use their experience to work out what you need to be focusing on. And then progress tests, we introduce these at intervals throughout. So by about week 3 or 4, you're starting to do tests that combine all the knowledge you've got at that point. So we're starting to combine practice areas. So you're having to become a little bit nimble in terms of working out what the MCQ is and what area of law, and then answering it. So we build up over the course of either if it's full-time 13-week course or the equivalent when it's part-time, it's just spread out a little bit more. But you start having progress tests every week. And you culminate in having 2 90 MCQ tests to really test your knowledge and give you a feel for what the real thing will feel like. And then our module we've degree awarding powers. So we do assess you at the end of the module, and we do that by way of 90 MCQ summative assessment in timed conditions. If you pass that, you pass the module, and you get 30 credits for the module. So it's not all self-study by any means. You get personal supervision sessions, and you're allocated a supervisor who will help with coaching and just supporting you and looking at your tests and just encouraging you to stay engaged. And also somebody that you can sort of, it brings in an air of accountability that actually you do need to keep up to date because somebody is going to discuss your results with you. We find students have an insatiable appetite for MCQs. So we've linked up with the external third party who have an app that has unlimited MCQs. They're AI generated, but they're actually very good. And they will just keep firing at you more and more questions. It's a great way, if you know, and if you've been doing the progress tests, you'll know where your strengths are and you'll know where your weaknesses are. And then you can start homing in on practicing the MCQs you're weaker on. And that the cost of that app, it's optional, but it's £95. And I think it's money well spent. And the feedback we get is excellent. Included in the course price are our hard copy and electronic practice manuals. There's no extra cost for those. When we first set up the module, we realised we did a pilot, and perhaps it was a surprise then, it's not now. Students, even though we're online, they really like hard copy manuals because they can annotate them, colour code them, flick back and forwards, and whereas they're also online, and that's great if you're travelling around. If you want to do some maybe in your commute to work, some reading, and then so you can mix and match your learning, but we give you hard copies as well. And on top of all of that, we know life gets in the way and not every student is ready to take SQE1 the moment the module finishes. So we give you ongoing access to the module for 14 months after you've finished. So that allows you to have for several more sits to happen, SQE sits to come your way before your access finishes. And we also provide up-to-date examinable law on that module, even though the teaching's finished. So SQE2 prep, what does that look like? Well, it looks very different actually, and not a surprise because you're trying to practice these skills. So we have over 100 plus activities and what we call builds. So we introduce you to the skill in the context of different practice areas, and we give you demonstrations, and then we get you to do exercises, and then you self-mark. And self-marking is such a good activity because it gets you to think the way a marker thinks and do stuff in your own time and just let yourself digest it and for it to settle, and then you can go back and do it again. And with 16 times, and all of this culminates in what we call practice and feedback sessions, of which there are 16. 12 are written and 4 are oral. So the 12 written ones, you will submit them through our online learning portal, Canvas. They're marked by a supervisor and you'll get written feedback. So you can start, and using an assessment criteria, it's almost identical to that on SQE2. So you can start to get a feel for where you're going right, where you're going wrong, and plus the feedback really supports that exercise. And there's also 4 oral practice and feedback sessions where again you get a recording so you can look, because we're all our biggest critic, but you will also get feedback from your supervisor on your performance. There's lots of exemplars, so you can start digesting what's in the exemplar and how you could improve your work. We also supply a skills guide that sets out the skills and what you should be aiming for. And again, 14 months continued access to materials at the end of the module. Now, one thing that we do both for SQE1 and SQE2 is at a certain point in the module, we hold what we call SQE Ready Review assessments. And if you engage, or we know that if students engage properly with materials, round about week 6 to 8, we can have a fairly accurate idea of how you're going to perform in SQE1 and SQE2. And for SQE1, we expect students to be hitting the 65% mark on the progress tests. And with SQE2, it's round about the same area as well. So we can then sit down with you, your personal supervisor does, and discuss, what's going to change that you're going to be ready for SQE2 or SQE1, or we can encourage you, give you confidence that actually you are ready and just to keep up what you're doing. So it's a really useful tool. And for me, as head of curriculum, it tells me that our materials are spot on in terms of they're closely aligned to what you're going to encounter on SQE 1 and 2. So I can answer one question's popped up straight away, Rajiv, and it's a very good one and very well timed. So our personal supervision sessions, you get a number of one-to-one, depending on whether you're in SQE1 or SQE2. Approximately half are one-to-one with your supervisor, and about half are group sessions. It differs slightly between the two modules. And in the group sessions, it's 15 to 20 students. So it's a chance for you to meet other students, exchange ideas, create WhatsApp groups, study groups, and also get the benefit of your personal advisor. So moving on, top tips for taking and passing SQE1. It goes without saying, engagement is key. Engaging with the materials, and not just engaging with them, but doing it in a way that's timely. Because if you don't do them in time, you're not getting the benefit of the supervisor feedback and all those progress tests. Read up before watching seminars to get the best out of them, because remember I said those seminars are not covering everything. They assume you've got a certain amount of knowledge, and they're going to address the areas that students typically find trickier or need a little bit more walking through, some of the more complex areas. So always prep before, and that actually feeds into the first point I made about fully engaging and doing it on time. And therefore it follows, don't fall behind. We give you a timetable, personal study plan, that shows you where you should be and the order in which you should be reading and practicing and doing tests and practicing feedback. So keeping up to date with that timetable. It's not a timetable that it's by the end of the week you need to be doing it. So although we say do something on a Monday, you might choose to do it on a Tuesday morning, for instance. Everyone has different study patterns, and also you might be arranging it around other commitments. So talking about other commitments, you need to plan ahead. Study time will never ever find you. You've got to go and find it, and you've got to do it early. Don't be in the back foot. So ring fence your time. And I rarely know of an employer who won't, when you ask them, give you extra study time, whether it's closer to the exams or whether it's ring fencing a few hours each day, once a week, depending how you're studying and the duration of your module. But you also have to negotiate with the people around you. And when are you going to find the time where, one, you're fresh, so not 11 at night after a day's work, and two, not trying to juggle other things. I mean, we all know it's a myth that anybody can multitask. You can't. So go for quality study time. So that means having conversations in advance with all the people around you. I've already said complete all those mock tests on SQE1. You're aiming for 65%. So that's, everybody needs a goal. It's very clear. That's the one you're heading to. And you can try the test as often as you want. And we've got really interesting data that it doesn't matter what your first score is on our progress tests. It's what your last score is. So in other words, practice makes perfect. And that's another reason for doing them early or on time, because then you can have several goes and get that mark up. And we put a lot of emphasis on supporting our students. The fact we're online means we can look at all the analytics on Canvas, we can see what you're doing, and we can have really meetings that are informed by facts as to where you need support, where your weaknesses are, and also whether you need adjustments or support from elsewhere in the college. Great. I think that's me, Lara. I've done a lot of talking.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I'll now hand over to Nicola.
Okay.
Thank you, and thanks for how much you covered then, Jane. We've had lots and lots of questions coming through, which has been great as well. And I think there's quite a bit that we've kind of already covered or tried to answer during in the chat as well. But also there's some things that we will cover coming up. But if not, just to reassure you really that we will definitely go through and just double check we've covered everything that we can try and do during this session. So this slide here is just really to give you some examples of the sort of pathways that someone might take. So right at the very start, Lara talked through that sort of jigsaw diagram really of the components, and was talking about the flexibility as well about the qualifying work experience and taking the exams or when to study for them. So this is just a few visuals here to kind of explain that a little bit further. So in the first scenario, there might be someone who thinks, yes, I definitely want to be working towards becoming a solicitor, and I'm going to study full time. I'm able to sort of dedicate my time to doing that. And so they might work through the SQE1 preparation course, perhaps on a full-time basis. And then once they've completed the preparation course, sit the SQE1 exams, And then once they've passed that, go on to the SQE2 preparation course and then the SQE2 exams as well. And then once they've got all of those sort of exams passed, then move on to the qualifying work experience and just do the 2 years in one go at that time then. There's a line underneath as well to say that or someone could take the LLM in legal practice, and I've got a slide coming up next just to explain a little bit about how that works as well. Or for many people, they may be working alongside studying. So I would say we probably have more on our part-time programs than on our full-time ones, because whether that's you're working in the legal profession and are gaining qualifying work experience, or just working elsewhere and studying part-time, a lot of our students will be doing that. But yeah, in this middle scenario, then someone is perhaps in a workplace, perhaps working as a paralegal, for example, and what they're doing there is gaining qualifying work experience, but at the same time they're also then working through the SQE1 and then the SQE2. Or someone could be in a workplace, again, maybe working as a paralegal or similar role, which is gaining qualifying work experience, but may not yet be sure about, actually, do I want to pursue the SQE route or not, and then decide to sort of go for it. So there's quite a bit of flexibility there in terms of the order that you do those things. Can we go on to the next slide, please, Lara? So as I mentioned, as well as taking the individual SQE1 and the SQE2 preparation courses that Jane has just talked you through, we also have those available sort of packaged up as part of an LLM in legal practice. So this would provide you with obviously a full postgraduate degree. Now, I'm not going to, because of the amount we're covering in today's session, we're not going to go too much into the makeup of the LLM, but just to give you the sort of main breakdown of it, there's 5 components in total of that. So there's the SQE1 and the SQE2 preparation course modules. There's also the capstone module, which is a legal research dissertation type projects. And then you would select a choice of 2 out of that elective modules list there. So there's those ones that you would choose to focus on as your additional modules. And you can study for the LLM over a 1-year full-time or 2-year part-time programme. And the great thing about it is it can be funded by a postgraduate loan if you're eligible for accessing that. So to move on then, just going to talk you through our available courses. Now, there were some questions early on from John, I believe it was, who isn't from a law background. And again, going back to that sort of jigsaw at the start, the requirements to become a solicitor, one of the things was to have a degree. And technically, it doesn't have to be a law degree. However, we would strongly recommend, if someone hasn't got a legal background, to go on to the graduate diploma in law first, which is the law conversion course. Jane has obviously gone over in detail about the SQE exams, how strenuous and taxing they are and how much you need to sort of put into them. And to come at that from a non-law background is going to be very, very challenging. So we do offer a graduate diploma in law. Come back to us, or I'll be emailing out information following up on this tomorrow. So if you would like to know more then about the GDL as well, just come back to us, we can assist you with that. But that's a 20-week full-time or a 40-week part-time programme at a cost of £3,950. So going on to the SQE prep courses then. So SQE1 prep course is £2,200, and we have 3 different speeds of that. So the full-time one is 13 weeks long, and when we say full-time, we would suggest it really is around 30 to 35 hours of study time per week. So we wouldn't there's no additional costs onto that at all. So we wouldn't suggest that if anyone is working full-time to look at a full-time study course. We would very much suggest you look at those longer length programs. So the middle length then is 20 weeks, which is around 15 to 20 hours of study time per week. And then we also have the longer 40-week one as well, which is around 8 to 10 hours of study time per week. And they're offered twice a year because that's when they're all timed to lead up to a particular exam period. SQE2 then is £2,700, and again we have 3 different speeds of that, and there's multiple start dates for that because of the 4 different exam sittings. And then, as I mentioned, you could also look at the LLM in legal practice, again, which runs twice a year, and for the 1 year programme, again, we would suggest it's around 30 to 35 hours of study time per week. Or for the 2 years, it's 15 to 20 hours. So I'll just give you some dates then for our next start date. So if anyone is considering enrolling onto something soon, then these are our next available start dates for SQE1 and for the LLM as well. So the full-time programme, the next start date is the 21st of September, and that's the same as the start date for the full-time LLM as well. And that would then lead to the January assessments. The part-time 20-week one starts on the 3rd of August, leading to the January assessment, and that's the same for the part-time LLM as well. And then we have this extended, sort of much longer 40-week programme as well. So if you are working full-time and perhaps, are a parent or have other caring responsibilities or, other responsibilities that takes up a lot of your time as well, we would definitely suggest that longer 40-week programme, which is more like 8 to 10 hours of study time per week. And that would then be leading to the July assessment. And it's just reminding me, one of the questions that came through about sort of the timing of the exams. As Jane mentioned, you would study for a programme that's leading to a particular exam period. So obviously most people would be aiming for that exam date then. And you would put in for, when you're ready to do so, you would apply for a place to take the exams at that sitting. However, if you didn't feel ready to do so, if during your studies things didn't quite go to plan and you thought, you know what, I'm not able to put in as much time as I'd thought, I'm a little bit behind, I might benefit from studying for a bit longer, then you are able to do so. So you're not tied straight away into sort of taking the exam at those exact sittings. Great. Moving on then, please, Lara. So a few things that we have mentioned already. And I'm conscious we've got quite a few questions, so I won't spend too much longer on this, but things to consider is whether you would want to look at the LLM or the SQE standalone courses. We haven't got the time to go into full details on the LLM on this webinar, but we have done on others, and we're very happy to have a chat to you separately and provide much more information on that. But that's something that a lot of people are kind of weighing up the options as to which one to go for. Our SQE preparation content is exactly the same as whether you take it as a standalone course or as part of the LLM, so you'll still get the same coverage there. So very much need to consider whether the full-time or the part-time routes are best for you, and the amount of learning hours or study time you can put in per week, and whether you're going to look at that kind of more rigid programme, which the LLM would be really as it flows through, or the individual preparation course we would suggest is a bit more flexible, because you could study for example, the SQE1 on a full-time basis because you're not working at that time, for example, and you've got a lot of time to put towards your studies. But then once you've passed that, you may then be working somewhere and actually think that the SQE2 would be better to be studied on a longer programme. So that's how we would suggest you've got that additional flexibility there. Taking the longer courses also allows you to spread out your costs a little bit more as well, in terms of when you'd be paying the fees for those, and to consider if there's a particular assessment that you wanted to try and work towards that exam time. Okay, so just to cover some potential sort of funding options for the programmes as well. So as I mentioned, the LLM can be covered by a student loan if you're eligible for it and you haven't already accessed a postgraduate loan. The Student Finance England, for example, provides over £13,000 as part of the postgraduate loan. Now that is enough to cover our fees of £7,245, as well as the actual SQE1 and 2 exams then as well. So that is a very popular route to encourage people to consider the LLM. As I mentioned, it's also spreading out your study, so taking out those longer length courses again allows you to spread out those fees for studying on the course and for paying for the exams as well. You may be fortunate enough, obviously, to have an employer able to support you through the programme as well, whether that's for a full training contract or whether it's to support you with the exam fees or for the preparation course as well. There are some scholarship schemes around as well. We actually have an SQE scholarship programme. The closing date is actually this Friday, but there's information on our website about that as well. It's there really as a hardship fund, so if someone is struggling to be able to afford those fees, then you might want to have a look at the eligibility requirements for that, and also look around for any other schemes that are around there as well. I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, but just to say we are really highly rated by our students. I can cover now as well, actually, that there was a question that came through about how we kind of compare to others, and really on that, I can't really give an answer because it's not something I don't really study anyone else's courses, and that's genuinely because we focus on what we provide. But do have a look at our Trustpilot reviews. We're really, really proud of the great feedback that we do get from our students. Similarly, there was a question about the exam results as well that our students get. Now, this is a really tricky one because the SRA still currently don't publish results to a link to a provider. So without everyone taking an exam and then feeding back to us, we don't have that clear data on that. But again, you can have a look through Trustpilot to get a gauge of what our students do think of us. So I think we've probably got a lot of questions to have a look at, but hand you back to Lara.
Thank you. So we will leave some time at the end to answer the questions which you have as well, just in case you haven't covered them already. But there's a QR code on the screen, and this will allow you to access our course demo. So it'll give you a lot more information about the SQE prep courses, and also the chance for you to be able to access and sample multiple choice questions, and basically gives you a better understanding of what it's like to learn with us. So we will now leave some time for any questions which you have, and we'll just work through the chat as well to see whether there's any more questions which have been posted through. But like we said throughout the session, if you do want to book a one-to-one chat with us, then you can scan the QR code and you can book a one-to-one meeting. It can be a telephone call or a Zoom. You can also send us an email as well, and we always tend to sort of pick them up as quickly as possible. And we also have a telephone number, so you can give us a call as well. You can follow us on our different social media pages. So it could be LinkedIn, it could be Instagram, TikTok, and we do post a lot of information on there as well. And you can subscribe to our newsletter. So that has various updates on the courses which we offer, just so obviously it's there then to hand if you need them. I'll have a little look through the questions.
Do you want me to pick some up there, Lara? So can I just say as well, thank you to everyone for assisting with each other's questions, because I've never seen such a supportive group. It's brilliant. So I think there's quite a bit that we have covered, but I'm just going to go back and check. Now, there was a few people that had quite specific scenarios about sort of entry requirements and exemptions and things like that, and I've tried to answer some of that in the chat already. But with my follow-up email tomorrow, I will try and put in some specific links to where you can get that information from the SRA's website that will assist you with that. I can see someone's commented of having difficulties with the SRA in terms of getting support from them, and that's sad to hear. I'm sorry we're not going to be able to sort of assist too much on that. but just keep trying to sort of persevere with them, I think, to try and get your questions answered from them. Let's see what else there is. So a question about qualifying work experience. Jane, you might be able to assist on this, just in terms of, is there a particular areas of law that people would need to work in? And also, obviously, if they're not working, for example, on a full-time basis, it would need to be a longer period of time, wouldn't it?
It would be, yes. So it needs to be 2 years' work, not over 2 years. So yes, you would need to do the equivalent full-time. With in terms of the practice here, you're not expected to cover it. It's not like the old training contracts where you're expected to have a basic understanding and usually you moved seats around departments. Now it's about being exposed to the competencies, and they're set out in the SRA website. Have a look. They're called the Solicitors Competencies, and you need to have developed some, but not all. And it's not even, they're not even signing off the fact you've developed them. They're just signing off the fact you've been exposed to the type of work that would help potentially develop the competencies. So I'm afraid that's quite a lawyerly answer, rather than a black and white one, but have a look at the SRA's website. They set it out in more detail, but you don't have to have a spread of practice areas. It's about the competencies, not practice areas. It's much easier to say that, Nicola, than to write it out in the chat.
Exactly. And someone's commented as well that they'd been working for the citizens advice.
I saw that, and they won't sign it off. Yes.
Yeah, and that's quite frustrating, and I'm not sure obviously whether that is because the position didn't quite fit it in, or whether they're saying someone there wasn't available, but.
Well, it's possible they may think they can't be sure you are being exposed to all the competencies, and it may also be that they don't have someone to sign it off, or they may not want to put themselves on the line. So I'm not sure which it is.
I know linked to that there was a question as well about who signs it off. So it needs to be.
I popped that. I put a link in the chat, but it needs to be a solicitor. Have a look in the website, the SRA website, but it needs to be a solicitor or they're a compliance officer, and that's a position in a law firm, usually held by a solicitor, but not always. So if they're a barrister, the answer is no. But if they're a barrister who held that position in a law firm of being the compliance officer, then they could sign it off, but it will come down to a firm. But the firm's circumstances, but most firms that take on students who know that they're planning to qualify will have someone who can sign it off. But it's best to ask these questions at the beginning and always keep a record of what you've been doing. Otherwise, it's not going to be possible to sign it off, or someone else won't be able to sign it off for you.
And there's some questions relating to people that are qualified in another jurisdiction. So I've mentioned that you should be able to apply for exemption from the SQE2. That would also, if you then exempt you from the qualifying work experience aspect as well, if you've met all of the requirements. But there is, again, I'll send out a link. There is a page where you can check exactly what you would require for that.
That's right, Nicola. I'm always a little bit cautious because it varies depending on the jurisdiction. So always go to the SRA and double check.
Yeah, exactly. But they do lay out on there exactly the title that you would need to have held, or the documents that you would need to be able to provide. Laura, have you spotted anything we haven't covered yet?
I think someone mentioned about like VAT and the fees. So the cost of the fees for all the courses is exactly what we've stated during the presentation. So SQE1 is 2,200, and you won't have to pay any more on that. Apart from obviously you will need to pay for the SQE exams because you book those directly through a Solicitors Regulation Authority, and obviously SQE2 it's £2,700. I think that's the one that I picked up.
Okay. Just scrolling to check. I think more are coming through.
There's one I spotted, and this is quite random in terms of me picking it up, but I was able to answer it. I can answer it quite quickly. What was the pass mark for SQE2? And it's quite high on the basis that SQE1's quite on the lower side. So SQE2 at the last sitting was 80% of students passed it, which is good news. The actual pass mark for both exams, as opposed to the pass rate, the pass mark does change a little bit. But usually it's around about the 60% for SQE and around about in the 70s, I think, for SQE2, but it varies depending on the sittings.
Thank you. Thank you to Bill for saying he highly recommends us GDL, which is great to hear. Thank you very much.
Which is probably worth mentioning again, Nicola, that if you don't have a background in law and haven't done a law degree, although you don't need a law degree, we highly recommend you do a conversion course to get an R1 is very espresso condensed and focused on SQE, but you do need that grounding. It's very challenging if you don't have it.
There's a question about when you book your exams. And the booking window, Jane, opens like a few months, doesn't it, before the actual exam sitting? So if you're on the full-time one, actually you're not that far in before needing to decide.
Yes, that's right. And you have to register before, and then there's a window in which you can book. And it's quite pressured.
And then are you able to change the date? I think there's sort of there's costs involved, isn't there, if you've been offered a place?
It's very you reach a point where you can't defer without it costing, without sacrificing all the fee. It's staggered, but you do quickly get to that point. So you do need to be quite confident and focused, which is what comes back to what I was saying about, really work out when you want to sit it and whether you've a realistic chance of being able to do all the studying to be ready for that assessment window, because they do require you to book and commit. And it's you get 3 lives for sitting the assessment, so you don't want to use one up unnecessarily apart from the cost.
There's a question about a taster version of the course. So we do have, you can access a demo, for example, of the SQE1 programme or the individual elective modules for the LLM, if you're considering that as well. That is linked onto the course pages of our website, and that just gives you a chance to have a look at sort of the learning materials, the platform that way. But we can't unfortunately let you attend a seminar or anything like that. There's lots of other recordings of other webinars that we've done actually on our YouTube channel as well, so you may find some of that useful to have a look over. We've done different ones where we've had, for example, students that have joined us and talked a bit more about their experience, or we've given some further demonstrations on the sort of activities that would take place on the different programs as well. So we probably spent a little bit longer on some of those webinars discussing different aspects which might help you.
And I'd also say on our website as well, we do have a lot more information, like a program specification breakdown of the SQE and what you will be covering. So I'd say if you haven't had the chance to already, then do go over and look at our website, and that has a lot of useful links you can download. And like Nick has said, you're able to download the demo course as well and look more at the course fees, how exactly it's paid. So it's always paid in installments, and also look at the start dates as well, and just make sure that obviously you're able to start them, and obviously send over all applications through our website as well.
Spotted a question about when fees are due to be paid. So our payment structure for the preparation courses would be, once you have an offer that you're ready to accept, it's a deposit of £150, and you would then actually be sent some our pre-course starter packs, which contains some extracts of the manual, so it's something you can start having a look over. You would then pay the rest of half of the fees 2 weeks before the course starts. So you effectively, by the time the course starts, you've paid half the fees in total. And then the balance is due at the halfway point. So as I mentioned, sort of if you take in the longer length programs, then you'd have a bit longer to spread out the costs that way. I hope that helps on that one. The question asking when the 20-week program starts, it is on the 3rd of August. Yes. A concern, Jane, from someone about studying the 40-week course and how they would retain information over 40 weeks.
Oh, how would you retain it? Well, I think you're more likely to retain it if you're not cramming. So you can go back. Materials are all on the module, on the learning portal. You can do revision. I think I'm a big fan of doing it part-time if you have other pressures. And particularly with SQE1, you carry all of it, most of it, the knowledge over into SQE2. So actually, cramming it doesn't always benefit SQE2. Whereas if you go on a slow journey, you're more likely to be able to retrieve the information.
Thank you. But just putting another question relating to fees. If a firm pays, generally the firm is invoiced at the start of the programme. That's something that's normally set up. But when you apply, you would tick that on the application form, or use inform the student services team who process the application as well. So normally it would be invoiced directly to a firm. But I know sometimes there are a few situations where an individual might pay and then claim it back from the firms, but the student services team will be able to liaise with you on that if you need clarification on that. Is there anything else, Lara and Jane, that you spotted? I'm still working my way down. It's still saying messages.
There's a lot. And students have been answering, or attendees have been answering them, which is tremendous. So I'm saying you can resit, how often you can resit 3 times. You do have to pay again each time if you fail. So it is harsh. But it reflects, I think, the scale of the exam that they're running. Lots of comments about how good our GDL is, which is lovely. It's an absolute gem. There's quite a bit about qualifying work experience, which I think we've answered. How close are the SQE2 mocks, the real structure? Ours, we make them as realistic as we can, bearing in mind we're online, so the orals are going to look slightly different in real life, but you'll get lots of practice with that. And if you're in the workplace, you're probably already familiar with some of it and how to talk to clients. So, somebody asked about, is there a tool to track qualifying work experience? Yes, there are lots of tools out there, so have a look. They're not hard to find, so I wouldn't recommend any particular one. And I think we've addressed most of the themes, if not the full detail.
Yeah, I think so. But we will definitely, as I mentioned, we'll be emailing out anyway. And please do come back to us. Then you can just reply on the email with any other questions that you have that we haven't managed to get to. But it's been a busy evening, which has been lovely.
So thanks everyone for joining us this evening, and thank you Nicola and Jane as well. Like we said, you'll get a recording of the presentation along with the slides as well, and obviously if you do have any more further questions which you haven't been able to answer, then you can just send us an email or book a one-to-one chat. So thank you everyone, and we hope you will have a lovely evening.